We are live.
Okay, we're live. Senate appropriations. We're still going to budget adjustment proposals. We have sheriffs and state attorneys with us now. You can introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Tim Leader-Singh, Executive Director of the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs.
Good morning, Senators. I'm Ann Noonan, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs.
And also with us, introducing Lauren Clemens, who is not Annie's replacement, but her successor in our department, Labor Relations and Operations. And Lauren has been with us for a little bit now, a couple months. Yes, and is doing an incredible job. As you all know, our department essentially has our own HR and personnel and labor because of the in-ray elections decision, which many of you remember, and Annie's said many times. And so you're looking at our personnel, labor relations, and HR all wrapped into one in this room. So welcome to Lauren, and I wanted to make sure you all were familiar with her. Did you also remember last year there was a position, fiscal IT position, we're in the process of hiring that. We thought it was important to note that Annie Noonan was doing essentially two jobs, fiscal operations and fiscal oversight and labor. And so we split those two, and we're in the process of recruiting for that right now. So Annie is here providing crucial fiscal oversight over me for the foreseeable time until as long as we can keep her. So, but that's some of the intro piece. Thank you for having us in. Just have a one pager for our BAA, which I know you're all probably appreciate. I do have copies if anyone would like one.
I'll take one.
No energy. Keep going around. Right?
Sure.
I also submitted, and I have extra copies as well, some data on the accountability docket in Chittenden. It's on should be on your website. And that is current as of last week. I have some updated numbers today, but it relates to our BAA ask. And I might have Andy go through the numbers and the asks, and then I can provide some color commentary if helpful on the accountability docket and transport issues.
Great.
Can you made me know in what section, what B section it is?
205.
1805.
205 for the state's attorney's piece and 207 for the sheriff's.
And the other last bit of preface is that our ask mirrors the governor's ask, and I should have started with that with respect to BAA, both for our sheriff's budget and our state's attorneys.
So I had 207, I don't have 205.
I believe they put it in a separate section with respect to the sheriff's, or maybe it was
G sheriff's 207.
Yes, the state's attorney piece. I think they may have put into a miscellaneous in the document at the governor's office. That's
The worksheet. You know what it is?
It's not time.
I'm picturing that the document is further down. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the one time. On page 7.
We haven't seen any worksheet that were coming, they used the ending. Oh yeah. Now we go over here. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, and just starting with the accountability docket, just going back in part because of a lot of good conversations in this building and Senator Norris's committee. We've been trying to find ways in our existing structures to move more cases more quickly. 50% of dockets are for people with 3 or more cases. So it's taking up a lot of our time and space in the court system. So we did a pilot program with the governor's office, the judiciary, the attorney general, and the Agency of Human Services has been incredibly helpful throughout the whole process. We opened up a courtroom that was available to us. It's called 3B up in Chittenden County on the 3rd floor. And we started to use it for people with 5 or more pending dockets. When we started in October, we had, just looked at the numbers this morning, we had 890 open dockets with respect to the 5 or more category.
That's not the total number of dockets, it's the number of people over the 5.
Actually, it's the total number of dockets. It was about 100 people. We're carrying about 900 cases.
Okay,
As of yesterday, we had cleared 530 of the 890 cases. So we cleared about 60% of those cases in just over 2 months, which shows you the power of court space and time dedicated where homicides and aggravated sex assault cases are not taken up that court. So as I stated, across the hall, down the hall, not mission accomplished, mission is in progress, but it's been successful thus far.
You started in October,
October 20th.
so is it over?
It's
No,
going
it's
to
another
conclude
month.
February 9th. There's a transition plan to still use the courtroom, starting in mid-February. And as a reminder, we were using an interagency agreement with the governor's office. So a deputy state's attorney from Washington County is co-serving as a deputy state's attorney and a special prosecutor for the governor in that space in Chittenden. Zach Waite, who at some point, when you should all hear from him at some point, because I do think it's very helpful to hear from him about what he's experienced. But he has been the point person on the prosecutorial side and working with AHS, with Department of Corrections, and with our transport program as well in Chittenden County, which has been key to the program. So we've moved about 60% of the original cases. We have right now 29 active defendants, accounting for about 230 remaining dockets, which is fantastic. That's sort of where we started, where we're at. And I think one of the real takeaways, dedicated court time, flexibility court time. So we're not doing 30, 60, 90 days. We're doing next week after. We're going to see you again. How are things going? And the second piece is having the AHS and support services right there in the courtroom or right outside the courtroom, so that the connection to services happens immediately upon court appearance, as opposed to figure out if you can get something in a few weeks. We've seen that immediacy has helped. Obviously, substance use is underlying a lot of the issues that we're seeing across the state, and Chittenden County, and mental health, and I would say access to housing. So those three converging pieces are all very, very key. So it's been successful, and I'll let Annie run through the numbers, which are just about what I would call personnel services. The deputy state's attorney that we used up there, no cost to the state, same salary and benefits. We just moved them up to Chittenden, no increased cost for that position.
No increased cost, but there's a cost. Is there something else that person was about to do?
His cases were assigned and managed by different staff here in Washington. He's rejoining in sort of a dual role, 3 weeks back here in Washington.
Yes.
So I just got a couple questions. One is there going to be a report from 3B project coming up, and who's that going to go to? Are we going to see a judiciary, or because today, was it Windsor or Wyndham introduced a bill?
Yeah.
For a pilot project on the same thing. I think that Chittenden County is unique because of the resources that it offers from the public defenders and the state's attorney, whatever. So I'm not sure every county has those same assets within their county here. So it's a little bit of a different situation here. So I'm wondering if we should, as political, look at it as a bill, maybe a rotating type thing here. But so we are going to get a report. Someone's going to get a report on this one.
Yeah, and there's a data tracking report that the governor's office has been driving. And that's actually what is posted on your website. I have extra copies as well here. The data as of last week, including the types of sentences that have been handed down. But what you're talking about is key as to if we're going to try to move this other places, maybe it's kind of a SWAT approach of not every county needs the same thing. Not every county has the same access to services. So what works in Chittenden is probably going to be looking different if you're in a different county. But Wyndham County is one of the counties where we definitely need more space and time for this, for sure.
We've had inquiries from other
Yes.
counties too. We've heard Washington County state's attorneys say, I'd love to have something like this. Rutland, Franklin, some of the counties where their caseloads have been exploding as a result of things that substance abuse, mental health issues, homelessness, all of that. So, I think the more, as people are seeing this success story, I think more people are going to be interested in trying it. At which point, as Tim said, that needs a judge time, it needs a space time, and it needs a prosecutor and defense counsel. So, it certainly has, in our view, has proven to be a very successful pilot.
Right. So, and sort of concurrent with what's happening in the courts, one of the things that we heard about during the summit for mental health and courts in September was actually from the Community Justice Center in Caledonia, about how they coordinate services to provide information to the courts, and have all identified services for folks. And I do have a bill in judiciary, and judiciary will look at it. But there's a robust program in, I think it's it's either New Mexico or Arizona. I always get them mixed up. Very, very expensive program, but I don't think we need that. But we need to have that, the community services and access and know where they are at the same time that this court is going on. Otherwise, it won't work. So that was a motivation for my putting that bill in. And I know we have talked about other things with,
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt any about getting to the numbers, but I have another kind of overall question. Is there anything that you learned that was surprising? It seems to me that it would be kind of a no-brainer that if you had a dedicated courtroom and a judge and an attorney, you're going to get through more dockets. So that seems like it wasn't a surprise. So what did we learn that we didn't already know? Or did this just prove the case that we got to put more resources into the system?
Yeah, I mean, so there's one piece that Annie's mentioning, just very getting to your point, having the AHS piece right there. And I say AHS and I'm using it as a synonym for larger services, but they've been very key and helpful. But having them right there, Howard Center and Chittenden, Washington County Mental Health would be here, seems to be one of the most important pieces to it, because even if you had the court time and space and you're kind of moving through dockets, if you don't have the connection to services, you're going to see them. And the other thing we've seen from the community and the business community has seemed to respond to this as well, knowing that if someone commits their 5th retail theft in Chittenden County, they're going to get into court quickly and have to see a judge multiple times with a sure trial date. That has changed some of the culture and perspective. And also the Chittenden County State Attorney's Office, Sarah George, working with us, has been able to, she's had her administrative staff assist with this, which gets to our VAA request, but she's been able to focus on serious cases in the other courtrooms. So that is a piece that I think we knew it, but we've learned that having that space to breathe in your major felony docket, and then a dedicated space and time for what I would call non-violent felony docket or misdemeanor docket, because there's non-violent felonies that are in this court. That seems to be more important than we even knew before. And truly, if you have a 5th retail theft case and you're trying to find your way into the court calendar in Chittenden County, you're competing with 24 homicides,
right, not
to mention a bunch of other serious case categories. Something we've learned is that the flexibility of court time, not just the access to the court, but the court being able to say, instead of, hey, when can we get them back? Yeah. I'll see you next week. Right. And just the surety of I'll see you next week and the week after seems to be sending a deterrent or accountable umbrella over the top of the whole program.
Great, thank you. Yes, Brad.
When the backlog is taken care of totally, and the program goes away, right?
It goes away at there's a 3-month.
The 3rd floor courtroom goes away. Will we eventually slip back into the same situation we're in there?
So something that Representative Oliver said, which I now have to quote, that this is the way court should be in general. So once we get out of this system of misdemeanors, we file more misdemeanors than felonies. So we're always having the alligator amount increase with respect to misdemeanor cases because we don't have enough trials. 80% of our trials are still felonies. So we stack up those misdemeanors. What we hopefully have is a space where we are not just delaying justice on the misdemeanor cases and nonviolent felonies, but I think to your point, this is the way court should be happening across the state in terms of not having to worry about competing with major felony cases. So I hope it doesn't go away in terms of what we're learning from it. Even if the courtroom, I hope the courtroom utilization continues as well, because they have the volume. They filed twice as many cases as any other county.
But it is this is a pilot, and it's ending in February.
The special prosecutor is going to move back to his regular job in Washington. We believe Judge Pat, the presiding judge, is going to continue to utilize.
He's a retired judge.
He's the current presiding judge.
Isn't he retired?
Judge Maley is the one who's currently presiding. He is going to be departing, we believe. But we think they're going to still use the 3B courtroom for these types of cases, but we'll see how that looks in February. We could report back in February, see how that looks.
Thank you. So the numbers that you see in front of you talk about essentially salary benefits and some small amount of money for operating expenses, which is basically in-state travel. But let me tell you what the small amount for salary and benefits is. This docket happens really quickly. As Tim was saying, you could be in there on Tuesday and just have it back in on Monday. So everything is very quick. Plea agreements are very quick. The filings have to be very quick. Any paperwork that has to occur to support this court has to happen very quickly. So our administrative staff in the Chittenden office sometimes have to they have plenty of work all the time on their plate. And sometimes it's like, well, I can't get to this work right here because I've got to support the accountability court. It's happening quickly. I've got to get these things filed. So that amount of money is supporting 4 or 5 of our administrative assistants will volunteer to do a few hours of overtime a week, like 2 to 3 hours of overtime a week to catch back up with what was a pile of staff that they didn't get to. So it really is a small amount of money to provide our admins with some overtime.
They get time in hand.
At time in hand, yes. Their FLSA covered, they get time in hand. So that's what that is. And the expense reimbursement is basically to reimburse. Zach has not yet put in any expenses, as Tim said. We didn't charge anything for us to put Zach in that position, but he's been driving and doing other things, and we basically left a placeholder for him if he had expenses that we didn't know about, for him to be able to put in for mileage or anything else that he incurred. And so we don't think it will be much, but we figured we better put some money in there because it's to support this court. So the total amount of money for the program is $36,848, and that's essentially most of that is to provide some overtime compensation to our employees who volunteered. We didn't say, would you be willing? And of our staff, a number of them said yes.
And Zach did that full time, but there was some effect on the Washington County work because they have one full-time attorney at this accountability court.
I think I could speak with the Washington County State's Attorney, but we actually spoke to her this
I
week.
did. I talked to you yesterday.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I think Tim represented what our state's attorney in Washington, Michelle Donnelly, said, which is basically her staff has picked up the slack. I don't know if there would be some issues for Michelle in terms of her staff, but that pot of money we would be putting that in our overtime line. So if Michelle said, Sue got behind or this got behind, we would be able to tell Michelle, you can tap into some of that too. But I think they already have some additional support in that office that we gave them a number of years ago. Washington County, unfortunately, has been a busy area.
Right. I mean, it's everything I heard about the accountability court I like, other than that Washington County might be having some impact on that because it's one of our attorneys.
yeah, one of the reasons that I made a recommendation for Deputy State's Attorney Wade, because he's a resident of Milton, and so he was a Chittenden County resident, but he wasn't currently part of the office, because one of the keys that we saw was not pulling from State's Attorney George's existing ranks, which are carrying 24 homicides, but an additive piece to that Chittenden County operation. And he is, by the way, embedded in the Chittenden County State's Attorney's office, and one of the intern desks in the State's Attorney's office there, embedded within her office, working in sync with parent staff.
Yes, Norris.
So do we anticipate that the state's attorneys and sheriffs absorb all these costs, or do we anticipate the cost coming from the Attorney General's office, or is this all voluntary? These only cost involved in the 3D project, or?
That's what we estimated as our cost to support the program.
For the SAS, right?
Yes, I don't know if Defender General Valeria would have any request. I don't.
Judiciary had them.
Judiciary money, because they had a judge.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I suspect everybody will have some marginal cost.
Right.
The sheriff's a little bit of a different situation. We're on that. So let me set the scenario. Last year we came into the sheriff's rolled into June 30th, last day of budget year, with $1,200 in the budget. You could say great budget estimating, but the reality is we were sweating whether or not we could even make final payroll for that. That was a really tough situation. And this year, what we're seeing is just exploding the house in the program for lots of reasons. Let's just use one. The accountability court had us running really ragged up in Chittenden. Secondly, we've been busy. The court system is opening. We've had more jury trials this year than in previous years. When we used to be able to get help from Department of Corrections when they were more robustly staffed, we could call and say, you've got somebody up in Newport, and they've got a trial. We need them down in Rutland on Monday morning at 8, and Corrections would move them for us and get them closer so that we basically they were right there. Corrections has told us and had told us, for months and months, we don't have capacity. We just don't have the capacity to move people around for you. And I don't think that is necessarily untrue. We had a very good relationship with Al Cormier, but we used to be able to call Al and say, this is what we're looking at, can you help? And they went to, we need 12 days notice, or we need whatever. At this point, they're basically saying we don't have the staffing to assist. So that has meant that we are running very, very, very rapidly. And lots of really long trips and lots of overtime. And our overtime line has essentially exploded for our state transport deputies. And so we're trying to work through what that looks like. In doing this, we've not only incurred overtime, but we've incurred a lot greater mileage because, again, Corrections is not moving people for us. We're running the roads to grab them. Per diem use, all of the things that we see that related to the transport program have exploded. So sitting with the budget and the budget status as to where we are. As of today, we're way over and over. And we're working with the sheriffs. We asked them to help us control. But the reality is, if the judge says, I want somebody to court at 8 or 8 o'clock in the morning, we don't really have an option. We issue a transport order. We want Senator Watson here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we got to
We'll move the hypotheticals around.
You might not get seen until 2:30 in the afternoon, and then we're dragging you back to where so this is what's going on. And I know Senator Norris is well familiar with sitting in court, in his private iteration of his career, sitting there hoping that the judge who had you bring somebody in at 9 o'clock in the morning is going to see them, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon go to the watch and you're not going to see them. So we're working. We tried to work, and we are trying to work with Judge Sone and Court Administrator Personas to try to get them to do more scheduling so that we are able to control the overtime at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. We actually.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, we actually, formally made a complaint about one of our judges in one of the counties who was holding all of our people to the very last case of the day, even when they would have us present there at the very beginning of the day. So we actually went to Judge Sone and said, this happens every single day. And our state's attorney got on the phone and confirmed it and said, it's just not fair. We're bearing the brunt of that overtime cost when they're not getting home to 8, 9 o'clock at night. Sorry,
Oh, I was just gonna ask, $50,000, very rough,
yes.
round number. Is it an estimate? Is
It's
it?
a pretty good estimate.
Yeah.
I took what we were spending every payroll
Mhm.
and I ran it like, if we continue with this pace, what do I need to fill the gap between that? It's like 49,000 change, but it's close enough to say 50. So I did on all of these, I actually ran it against our budget status. Like, what have we spent to date? What are we spending per payroll on all of these? And I came up with these numbers, hopefully. Now, the hard thing about this, this is sort of like the worst part of this whole story is that in this number to bring us to hopefully to June 30th without being in a deficit only does that. We have vacancies today that if we were to fill, I called Senator Norris, we had a chat about this a couple of weeks ago, but we have vacancies, including the position you gave us last year. In order for us to fill those vacancies, we would need to come up with for salaries, we would need to come up with 400, well, there's 4 positions. So if you do the 4 positions with their salaries as they are in the budget, we would need $490,000 to fill the vacancies. Now, what is in here is the half a position because when we met with finance and management, they said, you've got a vacant position that was unfunded. We told you to come back at budget adjustment to ask for it, and we did. And So 53,000 is pretty close. It's budgeted in as a step 2. We actually need 59, but you know, it's kind of slicing it close enough. We could probably figure that out. But we want to be in a situation where we fill the vacancies that we have, and particularly the vacancy you gave us last year. We want to do that. I just want to say that if we move forward, and Senator Norris and I had this conversation, you know, I would need to say to you, we will roll into June 30th with a way bigger debt, with a big deficit. This budget adjustment hopefully keeps us even keel. But if we fill them, we will be in a deficit. We would have to be back here to the committee for budget adjustment for a big, not for 183,000, maybe for closer to 400,000 or more. And we just wanted to have that conversation with you to say that's why we haven't filled them, because we just are looking at what it would cost us to fill them. And that's, salary and benefits, all of that. I'll give you an idea. I ran just one position at a step 2, which is basically not it's not an original program, but it's step 2, which would be hired at 59,883. And then you add in the retirement at 28.8%. You add in FICA, you add in all of the other benefits, including health insurance. Presuming the person is going to take health insurance, because most of our people will do. And the total number of what we need to fill one position at step 2 is 124,000. Now, that's full vote at a step 2. So it's not shocking because it's salary and all the benefits. Shouldn't, nobody's falling off the chair at that number, but it just goes to show you, I was looking at what did we budget, and most of what we have in the budget is in that range for the 4 positions that are sitting out there. In the budget for salaries and stuff. So I just worry that, I didn't want to say to you, this would be good. Give us this money and we're going to be all good with budget adjustment. We will if we do nothing else. If we don't fill them. But if we fill them, we're going to be, we'll be back here next year talking to you about it. So I wanted to put that out to the committee as a reality and see if we could get a read from you on what you think.
So does that mean you're coming back next year to talk to us?
No.
I think it's on the record.
I think it's these two.
Well, and one thing I might just add to the little color commentary. I unfortunately made a joke last year about getting held in contempt. Very nearly was held in contempt this year in one of the counties because I instructed one of our sheriffs not to transport an individual for a post-conviction relief civil trial. Because I believe our program is only staffed and only barely staffed to transport criminal detainees who are presumed innocent. For an individual who has been convicted, with every PCR they're convicted, that is something we are not funded to do. And historically, the Department of Corrections was able to do that in the past. I understand they have limitations now, but I was dragged up to a courtroom with an attorney and had to explain the reasons why I instructed our sheriff not to make that decision. And I stand by that because the program as is, we must prioritize people who are presumed innocent. And that is the priority of our program. There is pressures from many of the judges about us bringing people in for divorce proceedings for detained people, bringing people in for torts cases, bringing people in for juvenile hearings where there is a detained parent or a TPR. We have a very limited amount of money, $50,000 at one point, where the judiciary gets billed for TPRs, but that's not a long-term solution for that program. It will run out at some point. We haven't run out yet. But I just wanted to say all that being the context with a 2018 level of detainees in our DOC population, we don't say no to judges who say, we want this person in here for a criminal case. We have pushed back with a transport policy that says status conferences. I want you to ask the court, what is the purpose of the status conference? Is it to arrange a conversation about change of plea? Is it about treatment? If it's just a status conference, we hope that the virtual setup that we put in our facilities is still capable of doing the occasional status conference, because we don't think that people should be getting strip searched and 9 hours in the car to have an 8-minute conversation with the judge and meet their attorney for the first time. So there is some pressures that are outside our control, which, as you can tell, have put pressures on our budget. And in that light, we saw 2 solutions, which are quite important. One is recently, 2 weeks ago, an administrative order from the Supreme Court to help with conflicts. So where there's a priority issue, 2 transport orders come in. We have been policing which one gets priority, and that has really bothered the third branch. And I understand why. I'm not a judge, and I'm basically trying to police the issue. So We are now setting up a process with the court administrator's office where if we're getting that pressure, we can send it to Judge Zone's office and he will make the call about priority, not us, which is good. And we're working on that process. The other piece is block scheduling. The best practice for detainees would be between really the hours of 10 and 2. So we're not incurring a 4 a.m. ride or a 5 a.m. Drive around. And it's also better for the detainees to know I'm going to be seen between 10 and 2. I don't know when I'm going to be seen. If I get brought there at 8, I get seen at 3:30. So we're working on that. About half of the courts are engaged in conversation with our office or with the sheriffs about block scheduling, which is great. That will help eventually with overtime, but we're not seeing the benefits of that block scheduling conversation yet. But we are engaged in that. I just want to tell you, we're not just asking for this year. We're seeking some solutions to help with our budgetary issues as well.
I didn't understand, probably we're talking about the vacancy saving thing. We gave you the positions. I know there was the one where we didn't give you the budget for it, but that would be the 120. So why the shortfall, or just because you had that much vacancy savings in your budget?
You eliminated most of our vacancy savings from last year, but what's going on is overtime, and
Eating into that.
and all of that, so that gets added to your compensation, which then drives up retirement contribution, FICA, all of that, anything payroll related gets driven up if it's based on salaries. And we're also running high in terms of our per diem staff because they just need more people involved in the transports. Because
That's above what you're asking for in budget adjustment.
Yes, and overtime, and so really it's the mileage. Our mileage numbers were very, very high, and that's us running around the state. So the piece about the vacancies would be, this money brings us level, and filling the vacancies, which we like to do, will put us over by a fair amount, even by July.
Things like overtime are eating into the pot of money that we could have used to hire the vacancies. And that is something that we're trying to get our arms around. But let's say there was no overtime in the last 6 months, it would have been a miracle. We could have had some of those dollars set aside to potentially hire some of those vacancies, but that's not reality. And
Was this part of your negotiations with the administration? I just don't understand why you didn't come in and ask for all.
Some of that was here's your budget number for the budget VAA. We talked about this with the administration and said we will support this amount that's on the sheet of paper in front of you, not the actual meetings.
Well, it'd be helpful if you could do a handout of what those other needs are. I think that'd be helpful. I mean, we created the positions in front of them because we wanted you to fill them. So it would be very contrary to say that we don't want you to fill them. But I understand the budget situation you're in, so I think I'm clear.
I have all the numbers. I can put together a quick memo and probably get it over to you tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Any other questions? For sheriffs, former sheriffs?
No, I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Chair.
very much.
we'll use a different person next time.
Okay. Some additional physical help. We greatly appreciate that support. So Lauren is here to take over the labor relations and operations, which is what she's doing. And we are in the process of interviewing, have a candidate we hope will say yes.
You're gonna have some overlap, I assume, with you.
There will be some small overlap with me, particularly right now during the budget season. I think that's important. But Barbara's Bernardini, who I think you all know, Barbara's been in the department 15 years. Barbara's great and will also be available to fill in, if when I go. Thank you.
Always a phone call away.
Support.
Brandon, yeah. Okay,
I know some of you know how to find me. Thank you.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well now, tax. Bunch of people came in when tax was up on the agenda. People's house, the tax.
No.
Does that happen every time this way, Andrew? Looks like the room filled up.
It's, people get very excited about that.
Yeah,
For a hot topic.
You make different ways.
okay. So we're continuing on DAA with the tax department. You can introduce yourself to the record.
Sure, of course. Andrew Stein, Chief Operating Officer of Taxes. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. So we have three main items in the BAA. The first is a 1.5 million up for the renter credit, that's general fund. The second is a 1.5 million down for the homeowner rebate, which is general fund. So I feel I'm gonna focus on those two.
Those are the only two.
Well, we have a third,
Yes, some
related to we have a pilot special fund, $500,000 request related to, the transition from the telecommunications property tax, the telephone property tax to.
Is that in this worksheet? You know this worksheet? That's correct. Is it
You know, it's funny you bring that up because I had a little breakout of the exact items and I realized I don't have it on me for some reason. I realized that when I was walking.
well, the two, the homeowner rebate and rental rebate at the very top of that.
Yeah,
B 137, 130. Do you know where the other one is?
I'll take a look. It should be in the. That's your slide.
I had a little
Break them
cheat
up,
sheet when I was in
Brandon.
front of House Appropriations. Shall I start on those two while
Yeah,
we're looking for that third one?
Top of page 7.
Top of page 7, great. So starting with the renter credit, the $1.5 million up. So for FY 21, some of you or all of you may remember that there was an overhaul to what was once called the renter rebate, turning it into a renter credit. And that did expand the number of renters who were eligible for the credit. But year after year, we weren't hitting the $9.5 million appropriation for that. And so heading into, well, last year was the first year of this new credit. So I guess it was 2 years ago, the legislature updated the renter credit to expand eligibility. And that also expanded the group that got the full amount of the credit before the phase out as well. And so part of the story here is this past year, the actuals came in $750,000 more than estimated. So we were able to work with the administration. We were able to work with finance and management, had a lot of support there to figure out administratively pulling from some other appropriations where we had balances and some other areas of state government where balances existed to find $750,000, or at that time it was a little under $750,000, several $100,000 to keep issuing renter credits to people who needed them. And then we were able to continue in the new fiscal year when we got to appropriation. Now we're in the new fiscal year, and in addition to this policy restructuring, the renter credit increases because the program is indexed for inflation.
is that new? Was that one of the changes?
That was part of, I'm almost certain that was part of the FY 21. I don't think, the only thing that happened heading into fiscal year 25 was really bumping up that eligibility. Which was aimed at helping more renters and providing a higher average credit to those receiving it already. And the other element here is, according to the State Housing Authority, and our senior fiscal analyst, when estimating this, works with the housing authorities to get data. It seems that up to 1,000 renting households will be losing subsidies between now and the end of, well, pretty much in 2025, related to some Section 8 changes at the federal level. I'm not an expert on that. I have an explanation that I can send to House Appropriations, which I'm happy to send to you all. Representative Yakubone was interested in learning more about that, but
Maybe let's dive on that in House General. They're talking about Section 8.
we haven't, but I defer to the housing authorities on that. That just factors into our estimate as to how much is the renter credit going to cost, because when those federal subsidies go away, our renter credit accounts for those federal subsidies. So when those federal subsidies go away, that increases the demand for renter credit, and it increases the amount of money that our renter credit
And so the more there are and the less money they have, the more money that we pay. Like,
Exactly. So if there's in past years, when this change first went into effect, it was in the middle of COVID, and there were a bunch of enhanced renter subsidies, if you all remember. And at that time, analysts thought, oh, it's coming in under 9.5 million because there's all of these enhanced federal subsidies. So that's a major driver here. But over time, as those subsidies phased out, the COVID renter subsidies, we still weren't seeing the whole 9.5 million used. It did go up a bit, but not the 9.5 million.
okay, well, it's something for us to, because we're gonna see likely in the VA something on house on Section 8 voucher, so there's gonna be some dollars there, but we should think about how it's gonna affect.
How it'll intersect with things. Yeah.
Okay,
And then on the homeowner rebate, what this is this is an appropriation from the general fund that goes to making municipalities whole for those income eligible Vermonters who earn under $47,000, the circuit breaker, if you all are familiar with that term.
Yeah.
So what this is that's that general fund appropriation, and that $47,000 number hasn't changed for a long time, and it's not indexed to inflation. That essentially incomes are growing out of that space, and that's the general.
is there a home value part of that? Homeowner rebate?
There is a home value component to property tax credits for this 47,000. I'm not certain if it intersects with this at all. In general, for property tax credits, there are, but I'm not certain if it has any influence over this. I could certainly find out the answer to that though.
So basically, since it's not indexed, you're gonna have less and less every year.
Yeah. And I mean, it does depend on incomes, right? There was a little bit of a bump around the COVID era in this, and
It's
it went back down.
Totally coincidental, but the two exact same.
It's coincidental, yeah. And they're round
A lot of people
numbers.
say there aren't.
Well, they're round numbers. Frankly, we probably could have gone down a little lower on the homeowner rebate. Last year it ended around 17 million. I was a little uncomfortable because that number, it varies from year to year a little bit, and it's been notoriously difficult to forecast for the analysts. That one's typically, it's one that's forecasted, it's a consensus forecast between our analysts and joint fiscal office. So it's been off by 10 to 15% at times over the past 5 years. So there's a little bit of cushion there just in case.
In the homeowner rebate, we haven't tried to work on that.
There's a proposal, actually, last year, the legislature passed an update to this, but it's contingent on all of the other education finance and part of that actually going to see that.
I've heard from some of my town clerks that they feel like a lot of people that could get it don't apply for it. And the people that need at least are the ones that are on top of it. Just from there, just knowing, small town clerks know everybody in their whole situation. So I don't know if there's a way that we.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, and this is a conversation that we're having internally at the tax department, and it's something that our new commissioner, who will be here when we talk about the budget, is pretty passionate about, which is, service is a core value of our department, and how do we help people access these credits?
Yeah.
We just had a big expansion of credits. How do we help people who wouldn't otherwise access them? I personally speculate, and this is pure speculation based on anecdotes, that there are a number of people who don't file because they're concerned they don't have, they're low income folks, and they're not filing. And if they were to, they're concerned that they might owe a little bit in taxes here and there. And if they were to file, they wouldn't know anything in taxes. They'd be getting more benefits. So I think there's some outreach and education that we can and should be doing, and we have in the past, but I think there's more.
I think so. Okay.
There's also something that we're interested in exploring. It's for next year, but where might there be opportunities for us to help automate some of this? And if the federal government had continued to move forward with this direct file program, that would have made it a lot easier for us at a state level to move forward with automating a lot of tax filing similar to what's.
Yeah, that,
Any questions on those two? Okay, so the next one is for, it's for appraisal work.
yeah,
So the next one is shifting, the telephone personal property tax, and there's a telephone gross receipts tax to the property tax. And this was already in law, it was passed 2 years ago. Last year was in the BAA, and it ended up in the budget bill because of what happened with the BAA. And, so the deadlines were bumped out. And we had $150,000 appropriation from pilot, and what we were planning to do was use an administrative mechanism to pull that forward for a year. But because it was from a special fund and there was the notwithstanding language, when we went to do that, Commissioner Gresham and I chatted, and he thought it would be best to bring it back in the BAA, which I appreciated. He just, from a transparency perspective, thought it would be helpful. So then when we were going through the budget process, we decided, hey, instead of just asking for the $150,000, which was initially appropriated, ask for the entire amount that's going to be needed over a 3-4 year period to fully implement this. And so we're under contract for the appraisal work. This is the appraisal of telecommunications properties. We're talking about like Wi-Fi towers and fiber cables, all sorts of telecommunications.
is it just for municipal?
It'll impact the education fund as well. So there was a cost, there's a fiscal note on this that Ted wrote, great fiscal note. There's a down.
Good job.
Thank you. Years ago. There was a down in the general fund and then up in the ed fund. And then municipalities, well, number one, you're going to get consistency across the municipalities in terms of how this property is assessed, because it's being done by the state.
Is it just, not just telephone, maybe you said the phone reading, it's other communication infrastructure,
Telecommunications properties.
Is it just the telecommunications?
not electric? Well,
Not electric.
No, electric's different. That was
there are already,
there was a big statewide utility valuation effort that wrapped up. There were actually no
And
appeals.
lots of, some towns won and some towns lose, and we've heard from all the ones that lost. Can you
Sure.
remind us what happened in that?
Yeah, so previously, high level, this was something, my understanding is it's something that the utilities generally supported because their properties,
uniformity.
exactly, and their property is difficult to assess. And it requires a specialized, somebody with specialized appraisal skills in that space. And so we hired a specialist in that space to do a utility valuation for the entire state. And it's part of the grant list, and
There's more details about what happened because there were some big losers,
okay.
and I've heard from the losers.
Fair enough.
They were overvalued. So did you think this
It
was?
isn't overvalued. There's a whole.
Yeah.
That's. Any interaction with transportation,
This,
agency of transportation, because there's all this discussion about whether telecommunications infrastructure and right of way its own state should be paying agency of transportation.
oh, interesting.
And their report to us was mainly like, well, we don't know where it is.
Oh, so this is,
So I wonder if this consultant that's going to be doing the inventory,
this will be publicly available. So
you know, if it's going to be like, GIS, it's going to be that kind of level of mapping, or is it just?
I can find out what,
Okay.
and I have some details from the contract that I pulled out and from my notes as that, because I get updates as to how the project's progressing. So where we are in the process is the vendor has accomplished the following benchmarks: identification of the property classes that exist in the state and the creation of valuation classes, essentially buckets, for a model. And then an initial sorting of the data by location, owner, and class of property to get a grasp of the scale of the model and the information that needs to be requested specific to Vermont. Reviewing the unique requirements that are going to be necessary to value the different geographical areas in the state, mainly how to handle the Vermont's unique makeup of towns and cities in this space. And the identification and separation of ownership of all the wireless communication sites and companies that are located in the state, and the identification and vetting of the companies and company ownership mergers in the state to contact and send the information requests to and try to consolidate what information to ask for, who to ask for from. And I've reviewed more than 10,000 items, initial information to try to turn it into something more manageable for the creation of these information requests. So that's where things are
I
standing.
wonder if that vendor talked to AOT, which also had a vendor for their, can't remember if AOT did it or they had a vendor. It's similar scope of work, but it was only for telecommunications infrastructure within the right of way. It wasn't trying to identify, but it was kind of, can we get money for it? And their analysis was, and analysis was, they don't really know if it's in the right of way. They just know there's a line running this way, but does it go over the line, or is it in the farmer's field, or is it in the right of way? So they said it would cost too much to figure that out, but I don't know if this analysis will actually show us exactly where it is, or it doesn't matter where it is for your purpose.
I'm not certain either, but I'd be happy to have somebody reach out to AOT.
Well,
you know.
it's more complicated, you know, and when you talk about utility versus,
Telecommunications.
yeah, electric utility and telecommunications. Consolidated, you know, for example, I spent 6 years on the VEC board. 50% of the poles at VEC are utility owned and 50% are consolidated. And they share the poles. And they already pay a property tax on all of those, so they have to know some. And I'm wondering, does the tax department or whoever that does the assessment, you just did the assessment, share that with the transportation agency?
Yeah. I never really get the report. It would be interesting, or just maybe reach out there to see who's working on that. If there's, because it could be helpful. They could help this vendor, or it could help AOT.
And who was it at AOT who was here chatting, talking to you all about, if you remember?
Yeah.
It was
Indiana.
Michelle.
No,
It wasn't Michelle. It was, I think it was Dan. I don't know why. I think that's a lot of the. I don't know why Dan got that job.
And Dan, who?
Railroad right away.
He's head of the railroad division.
He's head of the railroad division, but
Or
consistent.
it could have been Jeremy Reed. You could also check Jeremy Reed or Dan, one of the two.
Jeremy, what's Jeremy's name?
Reed.
REED.
Yeah.
All right. I'll send this over.
And there's been a concerted effort, particularly amongst utility companies, to move lines and poles out of the middle of field and move it closer to the road, because not only do you get the benefit of cleaning up the countryside by doing that, but you also have better access if something goes wrong. So the utility companies have been, and they already pay a property tax on those, so.
Yeah, we don't wanna have redundancy in terms of the inventory.
Yeah. So, it would be interesting to see.
They are getting some money. Some of these companies are paying AOT for the right of way. So I assume they end up paying for the right of way and the property. But maybe that's okay. I don't know. They don't probably want to pay to it, but I don't know. Those are two separate things. You're paying for the land.
And it's really hard to figure out the difference between what's a consolidated versus a utility, because they share the poles.
Okay, I'll just add that. And then, so no other questions on that. You had some pretty large reversions.
Yep.
In your budget.
Yeah. So
Which I don't know if there's anything to say about those.
So sure, I'm happy to. Typically, our operating budget doesn't have numbers that large, and our budget, which will be back here at some point in the next month, I imagine, on our budget, it's 90% salaries and benefits and IT. That's
Just like the LSC said.
so a good chunk of it was vacancy savings. We had, so, and it was really in one division, in our compliance division. We had a situation where we had a number of vacancies and then we lost some key supervision positions who were responsible for recruiting. So it was a tough year for our compliance division on that front. We have a great new audit manager who we're very excited about, shifted over from the federal government. And I anticipate that we're gonna be reducing that vacancy savings number this year. We do carry vacancy savings in our budget, $700,000, might consider. But so it was above what we had anticipated. And then the other part of that was a number of IT expenses, just things like for our scanning project, for example, which actually this week we wrapped up the implementation of a major scanning project that was several years in making. Some of the timing of when we would pay those invoices, for example, span fiscal year. One phase ended at the end of one fiscal year, the invoice comes in the following fiscal year. We budget for that about, a year in advance or so. And when we budgeted for it, we were just wrapping up that contract, for example. And so when you have a big deliverable coming in, the invoice for a big deliverable coming in around the end of a fiscal year, falling in another fiscal year, that can create several $100,000 worth of space. We had the number, even in the operation costs, our ADS expenditures last year were down. For next fiscal year, we're looking at them being up a bit, as we'll talk about in a month or several weeks, whenever that is. So it was a number of things coming together. And ultimately, when our IT expenses were down, we have an IT fund. We typically do pay other IT expenses out of our general fund appropriation. The IT fund doesn't cover absolutely everything. It helps with a lot, but not everything. And so what we did is for our integrated tax system, we have a roughly $1 million, licensing fee every year for that. And we paid for that out of the IT fund to save general fund. So, and essentially we knew general fund was going to be tight. Our IT fund could handle it. And so we did that to free up general fund. So that ended up bringing this up quite a bit. Those really fun.
Then there's a homeowner rebate in your reversion, but then there's also
that's the
50.
That's the homeowner rebate in our reversion. It's the same story as the BA and the spirit.
So it's additional.
It's reverted. So that it's because it came in, it was budgeted at like, I'd have to.
You have the 1.5 million here, and then you have a 2.3 million for.
Yeah, so there's different fiscal years. So the reversion is from last fiscal year.
No.
And so we came in well under what was estimated. So when I saw that, I asked our analyst heading into this budget cycle, not just to do a forecast for next fiscal year, but to reforecast this fiscal year based on what we saw last year.
That makes sense.
So yeah, that's FY25. And then use tax reimbursement. That is the money that the state pays out of general fund to municipalities to make them whole for current use. The cost of current use is a bit over 70 million. And about 75% of that is foregone ed fund revenues. And then about 25% of that is the general fund. And that's this appropriation. And it's based on an estimate. We know roughly what it's going to be, but we don't have all the information. And so budget's based on an estimate. It was off by about 1%. So that's
Any other questions here? Tax department?
I just want to hit over time. So the current use program is costing the ed fund $70 million.
so between the ed fund and the general fund, it costs a bit over. So
Okay.
yeah, it costs the ed fund. If you go to the PBR annual report, which this year it's a little bit delayed, we have a new property tax system and a bunch of new data is coming out of there. So I think it's going to be coming next week.
Okay.
But if you look at last year's, it's going to be up a little bit from that. And I'm happy to send it.
Sure.
What percentage you said? Like 2/3 was education, 1/3?
I'd say it's about like three. I'm gonna say it's about 50 million or so, 50 to 55 million. Senator Westman, do you know? I know you're very part of this program.
Something.
Something like that.
And has it been steady, you know?
It steadily increases. Because we're talking about the difference between what would be assessed normally and what would be assessed if we weren't basic funds.
Right, so the value is up to
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah,
the number
so-
of properties, I guess that's a different.
Number of properties is up too a bit.
Well, it's not the amount of acreage, it's, there's more properties because people are splitting up larger, tracts of land. And, the way the appraisal system works is you appraise by first acre. And then it goes down. So if you have 100-acre lot and you create 4 25-acre lots and they all stay in current use, you end up with 4 first acres. So the value of everything goes up. So and we've long had this, and you're gonna get my opinion, because that if you live in a community with, where you put a large home and you have 27 acres and 25 of it you keep in the program, you cost more than if it's 150 acres in a piece.
Is there a current report other than the PDR report?
It's it is the PBR annual reports is a big section. And it's great. It has a history.
And if, since you gave your opinion about this costs the system, I don't think it costs the system anything. What you do is you say, because you keep your land open, we're going to tax at a lower level. And so I don't see it as a cost to the system.
It's a tax expense.
Yes, it's
It's-
tax expenditure.
The education fund part's the tax expenditure. The general fund part is an actual expenditure to the municipalities.
Because we paid it.
Yeah, and it's about, last year, the appropriation was about $20 million. So,
Does it ever come up without not allowing out-of-state landowners to access the program?
I mean, it might have, but I haven't heard anything about it.
Yes.
Yes. That was brought up to me recently. I hadn't heard it.
It's about, I think it's 40, somewhere between 45 and 50% of the land responsible program.
It's in the program.
In current use, so.
Yeah.
And
Would we know who was state landowners that did the program?
that might be very difficult to get at. I would defer to others who work in that data space. So. The thing is, like the mailing addresses for the grand list don't necessarily match up perfectly.
But the difference would be the tenets of the program is always, it follows the land. Once the penalty is on, the penalty follows the land. It doesn't follow the rules.
Did you ever come?
In the PBR annual report, your analyst did come up with a number based on analysis of owner zip code. 23% of parcels are owned by persons living out of state.
Thank you.
It's an estimate though, right?
Yeah.
That it's, I read from the report. I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some squishiness around that number.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know though. It might be something.
Right,
Yeah. I'm not. High level. I'm not the one to answer that, but I can find out if you want me to circle back on that.
Yeah, well, I'll let other committees take that up if they want to.
You send out a tax bill, and you have to sign up for the program, and you have to produce your documents. Every 10 years you have to redo your plan and everything. It's pretty easy to tell where the documentation, where you're sending all the paperwork. So
One thing
it
I'm not
must be pretty close.
one thing I'm not certain about is if you have multiple landowners and some are in state and some are out of state, how to differentiate that.
Most of those would be held not in sole proprietorships. Most of those would be held in an LLC.
So that's where the LLCs. Based. Okay, any other questions for tax or former tax commissioners? Any other
I have a quick question.
or former tax commission?
note for you, Senator. Are you our point person on this committee still?
I am, I think, yeah.
Great.
I have to look at the chart.
I'm just thinking for scheduling, we typically do a deeper dive.
Yeah,
on
that
the
would be
budget,
good.
So
Yeah.
I'll reach out and look at yourself.
Very good, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, so if there's no other comments,